Hey Victor. Oh, we have Maria here too. Hey guys, it's always nice to see our friends in the space. I think this is going to be a great conversation. This is actually going to be, and I'm not going to spoil it too much for everybody, but I think this is going to be our first conversation with a project that doesn't actually implement blockchain or decentralized ledger technology, distributed ledger technology into their platform, but still operates within the decentralized science space. And I think that's a very, very important delineation in terms of understanding that DeSci is more than just blockchain. In my opinion, it is actually an extension of the open science framework that incorporates technology, and that technology can be of a variety of sources and implementation. And really, what it comes down to is how you use the technology more so than the fundamentals of the technology itself. So I think this is going to be a really good conversation um, that helps kind of showcase that. And that's why, Angelina, I preempt this by saying that this is going to be a great convo because I think it's one that's very much needed for the space to understand the comprehensive nature of different aspects that can come to play here.
Yeah, Johnny, thank you for this brief introduction. And yes, indeed, I think we are one of the very few projects in DeSci that do not actually implement the blockchain. And yeah, and I'm actually quite with you on this, that DeSci is a sub-branch of open science. I also see it this way. But what really excites me about DeSci is actually the community. So open science has been here around for maybe 20 years or more, but strikingly, you don't really see many people actively involved in the space, like people having chats, Telegram chats, or Discord forums or something. And actively building together. But what I really appreciate about DeSci is how close people are, how cooperative they are, and I think it's a very good sign of possible success.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this is going to be good. So that wasn't actually the introduction, but now that people have already come in, and since you've already kind of launched it on a really good topic, I will start the introduction of the entire platform. And just so everybody knows, this will be on YouTube, so you can go back and listen to it afterwards. But our normal intro is, hello, everybody. My name is Jelani, if you don't know this by now. And welcome to the 26th episode of the DeSci Rising series, put on by DeSci World, where our goal here is always to provide an opportunity for many of the wonderful projects on our growing DeSci World dashboard to just kind of formally introduce themselves, update their progress, highlight their achievements, and just generally engage with both the DeSci world and also the wider DeSci community. Now, the idea behind all of this is always that at DeSci world, we very much believe that more than the tech, more than the funding, and this is what I was alluding to previously, it is actually the community leveraging these tools that are going to usher in many of the changes that we're looking for DeSci to bring to the various legacy STEM industries. Now, in today's episode, and this is very appropriate for the week that holds International Women's Day, I have the pleasure of speaking with Angelina Lesnikova, who is the founder and CEO of Sci2Sci, which is a platform focused on building comprehensive data management and publication tools that adhere to and help foster FAIR, which stands for Findable, Accessible, Interoperable, and Reusable data sharing principles. And this is essential for us to drive science into a more innovative, disruptive space and kind of take it away from the stagnation that we've seen happening over the last decade or so, right? And so, with all of that being said, and again, welcome, Angelina, and thank you for taking the time to help us learn more about Sci2Sci, but also yourself and your own kind of origin story into the space.
Yes, thank you so much for this introduction, Jelani, and it's really my pleasure to talk to you today and to hopefully also to get some questions from our listeners. I'll be very happy to answer. As Johnny mentioned, I'm a founder of Sci2Sci project, but maybe it will be helpful to talk a little bit how it all started for me. And for me, it all started with my academic career. I'm a neuroscientist by training. And while I have been doing my PhD, I realized how problematic research data publishing is. So just to give you some estimations, during my PhD, around 90 or 95% of the data I have acquired has never been published. which means that only about 5% of whatever results I have achieved were actually, have seen the light. And then all of these results, they were very carefully selected by my supervisor. And I knew the situation is similar with my peers. So I talked to PhD students from other groups, from other universities, and it felt very much similar. So what it actually means is that a lot of data that we see published today, first of all, it's very much biased because, as many of you probably know, there is this positive publication bias that scientists only want to publish something very fancy that will hit the most prestigious journal covers and so on. And to me, this was not real science, because if we think about what science is done for, it's about discovering how nature works and how the humanity can probably use this for their own benefit, to improve our health, to increase longevity and whatnot. But yes, I felt that the way it's currently going is totally unfair. And except for the fact that a lot of the research results have never been published, it's also the problem is also that what is normally published is not the raw data itself, but just the researcher's interpretation. Which means that the original data files, very often, they are either not published at all, or if there is a request by the journal to submit the original raw data, then it's just dumped somewhere to a repository without proper annotation, without proper metadata. And basically, it's not really possible to actually figure out what has been done or somehow to reuse it. So seeing all that, I was trying to comprehend ways to how to actually improve the situation, how to make it better, and how to make more data published, and so on. And at the same time, there was actually a lot of hype about blockchain and how this technology could improve the society. And I had an idea. I think this idea wasn't really unique, and I guess many people have thought that blockchain at some point could actually help science to make the transactions transparent. But anyway, I thought that it would be great to put all the transactions with research data on chain and to make them public and therefore transparent, so that whatever the researchers would do would become available for public access, and also everybody would be able to see whatever somebody has done, and therefore it could improve reproducibility of the results, transparency, and so on. And through that, first person who I met in this space was Shadi Aldamonte, the founder of DeSci. And then through him, I got to know many other amazing people in the space. And eventually, to cut the long story short, we gave up blockchain technology as such, just because we realized that with the current state of affairs, it's a little bit too bulky to actually be used for our purposes. And what we focused on is the value that we can realistically deliver to the scientific community. So I understand that it may be difficult to understand for most people who are very actively involved in DeSci space, because we all have a bias that we think about that too much, and we speak about that too much, and it's just such an important part of our life that we probably cannot imagine currently our world without it. But for most scientists, blockchain is something that is very much foreign, that they do not trust in, or that they basically don't know about. And bringing blockchain to science realistically within next few years, I don't think it would happen. And therefore, we wanted to go with something that would be a little bit easier to adopt for the broader scientific community. Many of scientists are these days, about 50 or 60. but and it would be difficult for them to get onboarded to Web3, considering the current barriers the technology still has. But what was important for us is to still focus on the value, on actually making science more decentralized, more transparent, more open, more available to the public, and also to actually bringing their ownership and agency over the data to those who actually do the work, to the researchers. And yeah, so this is how we're being.
That's really good, and I like that you highlight the some of the shortcomings that it comes to DeSci. I think all of us in this space, especially as we start to poke out, and you say it very well. There's almost an echo chamber that has been created within the DeSci space, and you know it's very intuitive for us to be like, yeah, DeSci is going to, or blockchain is going to be leveraged eventually to help facilitate and smoothen out these issues in science. But when you poke outside of that bubble, you realize that people have very, very, very different perspectives on what blockchain is. There's, I think, a lot of misunderstanding and lack of literacy with regards to the application of the tech, it being very much focused on financial tooling, but really it's a technology that can be applied to many things. But there's just a lack of knowledge with that, and we have, as a cohort, a lot of uphill battle in terms of trying to readdress and redefine a better narrative for what blockchain could be. And I very much agree that there needs to be intervening opportunities somewhere between now and complete adoption that help facilitate in a scientist's mindset what it is to be applying open data principles, fair data principles. And then that might lead, that's a closer jump to what potentially can come out of blockchain in terms of its inherent properties of these things. It'll help with that jump. So I very much agree with that. But to your point, and I guess one of the first questions that I wanted to ask you is, you talked about the limitation of blockchain, and I don't want to actually harp and focus too much on it. But in terms of your experience, what are those limitations exactly, aside from the bulkiness, and how is Sci2Sci operating in a way that helps get over that, or solving those issues in a non-blockchain fashion?
Yeah, sure. So just to give you a brief example of blockchain, I mean, in addition to, we know that very often it requires a lot of additional computations and so on and so forth. Just a very, very basic example. We participated last autumn. We participated in a Gitcoin grant round, and there was a DeSci track back then. And it was great that they hosted actually a DeSci track. I think it was the first time that we were all allowed to participate on Gitcoin. But even though we all, like me and many people I know, were very enthusiastic about that and were motivated to vote, to support the projects we like, to actually be active, it was still difficult for us to get many things done. So, well, starting from getting a MetaMask or another wallet, registering it, finding the way to actually to do transactions with minimal gas fees. This all has to be explained to many people who were new buyers in the Web3 space, and then it was not absolutely easy for them to do that. And then there were also, like, for instance, if some of you participated in Gitcoin, there were still a lot of bugs, and it was like many people had difficulty connecting the passport. And the problem is that the technology in many aspects is still not very mature, because if you think about Web 2, like we have invested like 20, 30 years into developing that. And the experience in many ways is smoothless. But when you interact with Web3 applications, it's actually such a rare case that you see something absolutely user-friendly that it's really frustrating sometimes. So this is what I meant by barriers. And in terms of why we eventually found our way without blockchain, we realized that for our immediate goals that we're trying to achieve, it's not really compulsory. So something that we, like our core idea, something that we started with, we wanted to build GitHub for scientists, so that it would be very easy for scientists to collaborate on their data, to work on their data in one space, and then to share it with each other and eventually with the broad public, and publish the results just in one click with all the metadata attached. And just having, Git-like authentication for users, and Git-like infrastructure for researchers would totally suffice in this case. And yeah, that's why we actually decided to go with that.
This is a really good point. And for anybody who was present at ETH Denver 2 weeks ago, last week, we had this great panel discussion on to D or not to D. And essentially it was, do you need to have a DAO, quote unquote, and do you need to apply blockchain services, blockchain utility to be operating in DeSci? And I think that it really broke down to it depends. And I think you bring up a really good point. Projects shouldn't just come in and start to slap on blockchain just as a cherry on top. You really should sit down and determine whether the technology is sufficient or necessary for your means, as a means to an end to what you're looking to achieve. And if you don't think so, and if it doesn't seem so, then don't apply it. You don't need to slap on blockchain for everything. It has its, as you said, Angelina, it's a very immature tech. I think we people who are in it have been around in it for so long that we think that it's in its final form. Blockchain is so far, or at least the applications of blockchain are so far from their final form that they're clunky. Essentially, they're clunky, and there needs to be an abstraction away from having to deal with signatures and like these extra steps. I think that's the only way for us to become, or for blockchain to become adoptable. But we're going to move away from that because that's actually the focus of this conversation. So what I would love to know is, can you give us a deep dive into what the Sci2Sci platform actually offers, and how, as a scientist or a user, what my user flow would be?
Yeah, sure. As I mentioned, the problem we are trying to solve is to make it easy for people to share and search for research data. And as Jelani also said in the beginning, the FAIR data framework, meaning making data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. It's a great initiative that spans not only DeSci space, of course. This is just a general open science framework. And people talk quite a bit about it, but actually there is not so much that has practically been done to bring that forward. And for us, to really tackle this problem, we broke it down to solving 3 key issues: to make it easy to collect the data, collecting the data by the researchers in an orderly manner, so that a person would know what is where and how everything has been done. Then making it easy to publish this data, so that's to not requiring a lot of time to find all this data, to put it together, to format in a way that would be accepted by publishing platforms or something, but very easy just to publish the data you have in one click. And then the third problem we wanted to solve is to make it easy to search for data. And so our current platform we're developing now consists of 3 units. And the first unit is an electronic lab notebook. And electronic lab notebooks have been around for quite some time. I'm sure anybody who has more or less dealt with science knows something about that. But unfortunately, not so many scientists actually still use them, because many of them are very expensive. And all of them actually have one drawback. you can have your research data there. You can put it, you can put like tags, metadata, you can attach the files you have received. But to publish this data requires an additional effort and quite a lot of effort. Again, I can give you one example from my own research life. Recently, I was publishing a research paper, and we had to submit all the original raw data to the publication, or at least we want to. And even though I have been trying my best to put all my data in order, to have it in collaborative folders and so on, it still took me hours to actually put it all together and deposit it somewhere. And therefore, what we are building is we attaching a publishing unit to our electronic lab notebook module, so that it's very, very easy to make your data publicly available as soon as you feel you're ready to do so. And finally, the third module that actually we're starting with is a search engine for data. And why it is so important to build a search engine? Like think about Google and how difficult life would be without Google. So if you would need to look for something, you wouldn't have a search engine, and then you would just have to go to different websites trying to search for pieces of information you want. And Google has solved this problem for just for unstructured data that we normally use, just web pages or photos or something. But this problem is not really solved for structured data that that is largely produced by science. And by structured data, I mean Excel tables or spreadsheets or something like the data that has been organized and that has a uniform format, and that is largely used for both more old school research, but also for new areas like machine learning, AI. These areas are very heavily dependent on structured data. And then Google actually has a Google dataset search, but this dataset search is not very well tailored for search of the structured data. Of course, you can try to search with keywords, but it's very difficult to preview the datasets. Well, if you just try to search for data that you're interested in using this platform, it's not so easy to find what you're looking for. And therefore, what we actually started with, and the first module that we are releasing soon, it's the search engine for datasets. That would make it very easy to find the relevant data.
This is actually very interesting because part of, for anybody who's not a scientist, we know this, half the battle is on one end, gathering the data and actually generating that data. And the other half is structuring it in a legible way such that you can communicate it and kind of organize it in a very comprehensive and cohesive way. Let alone, doing this for a manuscript or a publication that adds an extra layer of complexity. So a lot of time is spent trying to structure this properly. And oftentimes it's just not done, which is why it leads to, missing data, oftentimes false data, because things get lost in the translation between actual acquisition and preparation for it. And so it's great to hear that you guys are developing a platform to kind of make that, at least that process a little bit smoother. If I can dig down a little bit deeper into that particular component before we move on to the other nodes, but in terms of the data structuring, how does that work? Is there a preset template, or does the platform kind of structure it in a default form, and then you can kind of play with it afterwards?
It's really a very important topic. The question of data standardization. So for now, we are not really trying to introduce any new format that scientists would have to abide by, just because it would create a huge barrier for entrance. And just because there is a lot of data down there that is already here, and that would be such a pity to, just to get rid of and just forget, just because the format is different. So Yeah, well, probably many of you have heard this joke about 15th standard. Like there are 14 different standards in the field, and let's come up with a new standard that would be the best one, and then you just come up with a 15th standard, and now there are 15 standards in the field.
Yes,
So yeah,
exactly.
yeah, there are, of course, there are very rare cases where this really happens and where people come up with something so brilliant, so great that everybody just adopts it. But let's be realistic. It's very seldom to happen, and yeah, we didn't want to just to fail because of this point. And so for now, we are not really trying to introduce any specific data format. We just want people to go with what they have. But what we hope will happen in the future is that the communities around specific areas of knowledge about like maybe more specific branches of science would come up with the standards themselves, because this is eventually what normally happens. And when there are certain practices that get adopted, and when people like it, they start repeating that. So what we hope will happen at some point is that just at least in certain areas of science of knowledge, this standardization will happen. And of course, we're gonna try and support that as much as we can, but we don't really want to come up with anything rigid at this point.
Yeah, I think I imagine that I mean, part of this issue with these different standards that happen is that there's a siloing, like there's barriers between people are not talking to each other across different platforms, right? Across different disciplines, unless they have to. So you have these niche specific standards, which if you think about it, if you make it an open floor plan where people can kind of interact and bump into each other and, data can just aggregate and live in one communal area, then you probably get the formation of or that you would notice the commonalities between different fields, and there'd just be a generalized standard that kind of consolidates these 14 different ones based off of aspects that overlap. Now, I mean, I think that's what we need in science, right? We've strayed a little bit too far from this open playing field, and as people have heard me say, to me, science is a contact sport. We kind of strayed a little bit away from that in terms of siloing ourselves, and I love the fact that Sci2Sci, as a platform, in as much as it can, is making it a little bit more open for more participants to be able to input and determine what the best standard is moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. And what we also really hope will happen is that our search engine will help in this respect, and that's one of the reasons why we actually started with building this module. So what is cool about our dataset search and the feature that I really love, personally love and proud of, is that you don't necessarily have to search just by keywords. That's what, like, of course, what you can do, but you can just search using your template file. You can drag and drop a file you have, like a dataset, and then our platform will find it will search through not only the metadata, like the description of the file, but also the contents of the file, like for instance, which columns this dataset has. And it will find the datasets with the biggest structural similarity and show them to you. And then currently there is a big problem that, for instance, the same thing can be named differently in different datasets. Somebody writes trees, and other, like some people just mention, like for instance, may write timber, or something like that. And then like our current search is capable of dealing with that, so it's still fine. Like it uses Elasticsearch, and it can find categories with synonymous meanings. But what we hope will happen at some point is that people will aggregate these data sets, and they, like, based on the data sets that will be most popular, people will come up with certain standards that they will find will work better for their needs, or like for the needs of this field.
That is very exciting. And that was actually going to be my question. How contextual or contextually, consideration does your search engine have? And being able to distinguish between common terminologies that may be not, specifically exact is very important because exactly that, right? That's actually really cool. I agree with you. That's a very exciting perspective because that really helps drill down and kind of get rid of this issue of duplication of efforts, where you have like 1,000 different labs tackling the same thing, partially because they're not all publishing their data, but also because there's just a lack in understanding what each and each other are doing. Being able to relatively easily pull up those participants that are structuring, not that are not only structuring their data in the same way, but also applying it towards a same cause is actually very important in terms of, again, reducing duplication of effort, but also fostering collaboration, right? Because then you find other people, basically mini tribes within the scientific societies that are tackling the same things you are, that are not necessarily the big labs that you hear about all the time, but more the small ones that are just as effective. That's actually really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, collaboration is something that we really hope to facilitate because, like with our platform, it will be very easy for, of course, not only for single scientists to work on their data, but you can tune in access settings to allow work together, for instance, within collaborative work within your lab, or among different labs, or among like just make it public and ask help for anybody. My biggest concern here, or just something that I still don't know how to achieve, is how to actually how to incentivize collaborative work here. And I think this is something like this is a big question in the area of DeSci overall, how to actually switch this current system where scientists try to compete against each other to make them collaborate with each other and to actually benefit from that, so that when, for instance, two different labs are working on the same problem, they would not try to, just outcompete each other and be the first ones to publish their work. And if somebody receives the other group's paper for review, they will, just try to delay its publication as long as possible to actually be the first to publish. Because these are very nested things that don't really synergize with the original meaning and goal of science. And how to actually incentivize this collaborative work, how to make people receive real value from working together and achieving together much bigger goals. This is something that unfortunately I don't have a clear answer yet to.
That's actually a really good point. And this is where I think blockchain becomes sufficient, at least as the most current tech of it, is that it allows you to generate these incentive models. Now, it's not the only way. You can create incentives in other ways. But I think people are seeing that the ease of creating at least financial incentives via blockchain is a lot easier. You can't just spin up your own currency. But I think there are other utilities that can go beyond that. I think the application of or the generation of impact certificates, retroactive funding, which is still financial, that but they don't necessarily rely fully on blockchain. I think these are all utilities, and I think to your point, one, that's not something that you need to solve in and of yourself. I think in line with this collaborative spirit, what I imagine DeSci is going to be is a Voltron, and yes, I'm dating myself, but it's going to be an amalgamation of participants of projects that kind of all fit together specifically based off of their use cases that actually ultimately come together to help push science. So we can have Sci2Sci plug into an incentive mechanism like a Gitcoin or like anything else, any other platform that's coming out, and they can help solve that. So people can leverage the non-complicated, non-blockchain necessity component of Sci2Sci, and in the back end, you guys can deal with any, blockchain integration with that partner that kind of just facilitates this process. And I think that's one vision that I see. I think there's open interpretation to all kind of things that we can put together.
Yeah, I love it, and absolutely, because we have been talking to many many groups, many DAOs, many projects in the space, and yeah, absolutely, we're very excited about potential possibilities for collaboration, and especially for these incentives mechanisms, because I think it's very important, and it's something that would promote the adoption of that, because eventually everything depends on whether people are gonna love and use it or not. And I've also seen that DeSci has requested an opportunity to speak because maybe they have something to say on this topic.
Yeah, for sure. Just before that, I just want to say absolutely teamwork makes the dream work, and we have to come together to do this all together. But yes, we've changed the format a little bit of DeSci Rising, wherein I'd love to have this be more of a pluralistic type of discussion. So anybody who does have a commentary or question, you're free to come up. You don't need to wait to the end. Just put in a request and I'll bring you up. Please be mindful of the time though, and try to make your commentary questions concise to allow Angelina to answer them comprehensively. So, Maria, I'm assuming that's you. It's always great to hear you. It's been a while since I've spoken to you. Come on up.
Hi, Jelani. Hi, Angelina. Yes, it's Maria speaking through DeSci. Angelina, very nice to hear about your project. I also believe that, sorry, there are many things that you can do using the tools that we already have, and advancing as we advance the building of Web3 using blockchain. I would love to chat with you about the incentives. We can set a time and talk together about our both projects. And I want to tell you that I'm trying to subscribe to beta on your platform right now. And you would not let me enter my number in Brazil. So, this is just a hiccup here. Just to let you know, straightforward, because I am looking at your platform, looks wonderful, and would like to subscribe. So let's have a chat together sometime in the future.
Awesome, Maria. Thank you very much for letting us know. We'll check that tonight. And yeah, sorry to hear that you have problems. But definitely we will look into that. And just to let you know, also phone is not mandatory, so you can just subscribe without leaving your phone number. I guess the mandatory fields should be marked with an asterisk. But anyway, thank you for bringing it up, and we'll double check that for sure. And yeah, absolutely looking forward to discussing more.
So, kind of jumping off of Maria's commentary, for your search engine, so there's contextual differences that sometimes limit scientific collaboration and identification of common data points or project points, but there's also language barriers. And so how does your search engine or will your search engine factor in things like, differences in language? So we had Dachi here from DeSci China, and different publication languages are sometimes an issue. Can your search engine contextualize within and across different languages?
Well, for now, we haven't really had too many tests with different languages. We definitely index through different ones. So we are now running our tests within a few different languages, and I've seen German, I've seen Spanish, and so on. So we didn't really focus too much on the language conversion. And yeah, thank you so much for bringing it up. I think it would be really cool and important to consider like finding synonyms within the data sets. Yeah. We didn't really think about that, but that's going to be a great feature. Thank you.
Yeah, no, by all means, please. I think one of the most exciting things to me with a platform like your own, and what I hope to see with other similar kind of platforms, is for example, if my native language is German and I only speak German, and I put in a query on, particular scientific topic, if it can also pull up based off of publications in Chinese and then translate that to a certain extent, it doesn't have to be, optimal, like super optimal at first, but bring me back translations of scientific research that is also similarly structured and is on the same topic, I think that would be groundbreaking and very impactful in terms of facilitating this collaboration and almost breaking down these national divides to governments might not like that, but um, people being able to kind of do this cross border and cross languages and cross cultures, I think that would be a huge impactful service that you guys would be able to put together. I imagine with AI that would be not too difficult. And I say this as a non-tech developer. But I think that would be a really amazing feature that I would love to see on your platform.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really fantastic idea and a very important one. And we actually we know very well one project currently, like a startup. They do translations from different languages in real time. Well, they do video translations, I think, mostly. But anyway, the idea is that the service is gaining popularity very quickly, just because exactly because of the same reason they're breaking barrier between languages. And I think it would be a great addition, and I will definitely make sure with our CTO that we're adding that to our backlog.
Yes, I'm sure you guys have a lot of things planned in the backlog, so I hope that can be added for sure. Um, I guess my next question for you guys is, the FAIR principle is almost an obvious paradigm in terms of a necessity for science. However, it does, similar to blockchain, it does have a few extra steps in terms of being able to structure your data in a way that, other people can access. Do you envision that to be one of the limitations that might hinder or stop individuals from wanting to adopt not just your platform, but the FAIR principles overall? And if so, and even if not, what are some of the other limitations that you guys think you might face in terms of getting more participants in to leverage Sci2Sci?
Yeah, great questions. Well, first of all, about fair data, I think you're absolutely right that it has both advantages and like it also poses barriers. I would say that I think it often happens not only in science but in many other disciplines. Like when somebody is introduced with something new, there is first a novelty barrier. And actually, in science, it's called neophobia. And just because in my neuroscience background, I worked a lot with mice, and these are the animals that have a lot of neophobia. It means that whenever they encounter a new object, they at first feel really scareful, and only after a certain time they start, exploring it. But I think it's actually it's somewhat similar to what people have, because very often people feel very hostile towards new technologies or new data formats or whatever. But then in the end, very often people realize the benefits, and they actually sometimes find it hard to admit that they were not right, but they eventually adopt that. And in terms of fair data principles, what I hope will actually happen is having templates for the data, like hopefully community developed, but probably also I don't exclude the possibility that there will be just some active users who might suggest their templates, and if they are loved by the community and by other people, they will probably be adopted. I think that will all actually make it much easier to run and to run experiments and to write them down. For instance, now when you open a methods section of the paper, it's a full anarchy. So you have descriptions of the experiments, but everybody writes whatever they want there. So some people find it important to mention like the temperature of the reaction, but some people find it not, or they may just forget mentioning that. Or like talking about experiments with animals, some people mention the light conditions, other people forget about that, but that might be a very important factor. Or just some metadata that could be automatically collected, like for instance, the season, the time of the year when the experiment is carried out. For some animals, they have these shifts in the behavior, and that may bring really valuable data about the outcomes of the experiment. And if this data is automatically recorded and added to our lab notebook, that might provide additional value. But what this all comes down to is I hope that when you will have certain templates that you can use for running and for describing your experiment, it will actually make it easier for you to run that. And it will also make it easier for other people to read your work, to compare the results of your work, and to eventually understand your data. So I think it may absolutely pose certain, or it may face certain resistance in the beginning, but eventually I think it's going to make everybody's lives easier. And in terms of your second question, like what are the potential hurdles our platform may face, I think, of course, the biggest question to me is whether it's going to be loved and used by researchers or not. Because if people use it, then it means that it brings value and it brings changes, and it actually makes us one step closer to the world we envision. And to achieve that, we are trying really hard to actually achieve two goals: to make our platform really deliver useful functionality, to make people's life easier, and on the other hand, to have great design. So we were really kind of inspired by the two biggest players in the field, and when doing the design of the platform, we were checking the material designs from Android and also the human interface guidelines from Apple. And well, I hope that we did a great job, and that people will like it. And because especially with electronic lab notebooks, the way I see people use our platform, it's going to be like the first thing they open when they come to work in the morning. They can do like all the experiment relating notes down there, attach the result files, and then that will be the last thing they close before leaving. And that's quite a bit of time. So I really hope that people will enjoy, people will just, find it pleasant to interact with our platform. So that's why I'm like me and our CTO are trying to stress a lot the usability and the great design.
That's really good because I think as a lot of us know, and especially scientists that have been working in the field for a few decades or more, science is really bad with branding. It's very, very bad with theme colors and making things like visually and design appealing. It's become much better over the last few years. But I don't think we've caught up to things like social media level of, acquisition and comfortability with design. And it would be great to have, and I'm thinking about it, and as you put it off, it's the first thing you open, the last thing you close, having an ability to customize themes and, design your interface, at least graphically, how that speaks to you, I think will go a long way with making people feel more comfortable and wanting to leverage it, right? It's a lot of the same branding tactics that other platforms use. Science needs to start to adopt that if we're actually going to make people feel comfortable and want to use these platforms. So it's great that you guys are thinking about it. And just looking at your website, which I have a couple of times, you guys are off on the great start. The website looks amazing, looks beautiful. And I hope that the back-end platform looks like that as well. Go ahead, Maria.
Yes, I would like to make another question, and this one it is related to security, Angelina. How would you increase people's perception that their data is secure with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you so much for asking it. First of all, at this very point, we are not trying to work with the very sensitive data, like with the data from human patients, for instance, just because we want to go step by step, and this is something that really brings a lot of questions and a lot of barriers. For example, last year was part of a COVID consortium that was composed of a few different countries. And these were all European countries, like most of them part of the European Union, Netherlands, Finland, also Switzerland. And it was impossible for the researchers to actually compare the data from 3 different institutions just because of GDPR and barriers that this human patient data had. So at this very point, we're not trying to work with highly sensitive data, even though we envision it as one of our future steps. And we talked, for instance, with WaveChain about the possibility to use their secure computing to work with patient data without actually accessing, the highly sensitive information. But for now, we're trying to use just the normal research data that can eventually be made open and publicly available. And with that, well, just securing the normal lab data, like if you don't want to have your research data currently available for everyone, like if you want to have your electronic lab notebook just for yourself, it's not like it's not very rocket science. I mean, it's like all these protocols are in place. It's not that super difficult to implement, to make it, just to make it available just to you, or to change the security access to, for instance, to the people in your group. And because our CTO actually has a great experience in leading engineering teams. He has worked in tech giants, building applications and working both on backend and frontend, and like he actually also worked a lot with user data. So he has big experience in in making the system secure. So I trust in him, and I think it shouldn't be a big issue for us.
I actually like to pivot, not pivot, but like jump off of that, springboard off of Maria's question. In terms of the data, where is it being stored? Is it being stored and people are going to take this wrong, but this is not actually a bad word, in a centralized Sci2Sci server, or is it being committed to IPFS? Like, where is the data that is being uploaded onto, the notebook and all this kind of stuff? Where is that being stored?
Well, we offer currently both possibilities, like to have the data on your own server. You can also upload it to our servers. We're currently using Amazon Web3 services for that. So we are not at this very stage working with IPFS or other decentralized protocols. Yeah, so if you want to keep the data on your own servers, that's no problem for us. So you can absolutely do that, and just like have us a link, offer a link to this repository, or you can deposit the data on our servers, or like not our, but like to deposit it on Amazon servers through us.
Absolutely. And I want to re-emphasize this thing. Centralization is not a bad word in this space. Sorry, it is a bad word in this space, but it shouldn't be, right? Some things don't need to be decentralized, and some things are just not, it's not practical to do so. So I'm very glad that you guys are, you're open to talking about how your platform leverages or stores their data, because a lot of projects are scared to do so from fear of being backlash, but that's absolute nonsense. My other question to you guys is, obviously Sci2Sci is a company, it's a corporation. And in my opinion is open science doesn't necessarily mean free science. I imagine that there's a monetization structure that is going to be implemented into the Sci2Sci platform. I could be wrong, but if there is, what does that look like?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, I think you have right that open science does not necessarily have to be free science. In terms of, and I think that like currently we pay thousands of dollars just per publication to make it open, and if we can go down from that to like a few dozens of dollars, that would basically cover their service expenses and so on. That would make a huge difference. And yeah, for us, of course, we cannot offer this like the whole service for free, just because the project have to be self-sustainable. And of course, we can try to be a totally non-profit organization, or try to just live on grants. But this is not something that is very reliable and that is very sustainable in terms, like if you always depend on somebody else's money, this money can always run out. So, but what we're trying to achieve, we're trying to, or at least we hope to get most of our income from corporations, from offering services for them, because we talked to quite a few big players in the field, and what we realized is that the service of search engine for datasets would be a very valuable service for them. And many companies would be willing to pay to actually allow their researchers to have access to our search engine, to our service, to have access to API to automate acquisition of our search results. And this is one money stream that we are planning to have, and that we hope will cover a big will bring us enough resources to actually offer our services at to largely cover our own expenses, and then to let us offer our services for researchers at a much discounted price. And for researchers, what we are planning to kind of like what's their strategy we're planning to have is we're planning to offer a subscription model for electronic lab notebooks, so that they would be paying for using our lab notebook services. But of course, publishing the data would be absolutely for free. And we're planning to, we hope we'll be able to offer these electronic lab note services at a much reduced price as compared to the current price tags that electronic lab notebooks have. And one feature that I think we can offer, and that could also actually compensate most of the costs that we would have, is to offer advertisement services for research vendors, but not just in the form of banners or something. But when you write materials and methods in research papers, you always have to specify all the catalog numbers, all their manufacturers, like where you bought these antibodies from, and so on and so forth. So if we would offer direct links to these vendors' websites and just charge them some small money for giving that, that would actually be beneficial for everyone. It would be, of course, advertisement or like direct links to the research vendors, but it will also help scientists to very easily search for antibodies that have worked, so that you can, on our platform, you can just click on this antibody and you will immediately see all the projects that have used that and that have successfully validated this research item, meaning that we would offer quality assurance services in this case. And overall, we just like the idea of reinvesting money from industry players and big institutions to support services and contributing to common good.
I've heard that so many times, and I very much reiterate that same point, right? I think DeSci, and at least the open science movement, needs to take from the Robin Hood playbook, and it's not steal. Steal's not the right word, but appropriate funds from larger corporations that have previously been vamping scientists and redistribute that out to the scientists themselves in such a way that even if let's say Sci2Sci was even to charge the similar amount as competitive players in the space, I think the amount of value that you add in terms of streamlining the publication, the data management services, or portion of science is actually worth that price, right? So it's still a value add, it's still a steal when you add in all this extra layers. And then on top of that, looking to reduce the cost, you guys are amazing. And I'm very excited about being able to leverage your tool and showcase it out to other participants. I think these are the things that really are going to push the space forward in, being able to highlight usable tools that solve problems, the day-to-day problems that scientists have. This is what I'm excited about being in this space. So thank you again for such an amazing tool. I'm sure it's in development. I'm sure not everything is finished, but if everything that you say is what's going to bear fruit, then I'm very much excited about that.
Yes, thank you so much, Jelani. And just to let everyone know, we're currently looking for beta testers, because our search engine is almost ready to be tested by the public. So if you can spread the word, and if you know like the interested communities and parties who would be willing to test our search engine for datasets, I can post a link to the video where you can get a glimpse of what it looks like, just like some basic functionality. And we will be very happy if you could help us find the people who are willing to test that and provide us the feedback, like what they like, what features they find useful, whether they are missing something critical, and so on.
Oh, absolutely. So just off of that commentary, we are going to DeSci World is currently in the process of forming partnerships with universities and different student groups, College Now, all these different student organizations that I think are looking for, you know, actual tools to process and to handle, to kind of showcase, to bring in more of the student body. So you and I will talk. I will reach out to you privately via DM, and we will kind of put that together because we want to put together a tool case, a toolbox of DeSci products that people can use and leverage and beta test to, on one hand, help test out and push the boundaries of this tech, but also for them to understand what is being built. So that's, you can definitely count me in personally and the DeSci World project. And I see Maria clapping hands, so I know DeSci will help with that as well. So yeah, you definitely have advocates on our end.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jelani. That would be great. And it's also been my great pleasure to talk to you today. As always, you're such an inspiring interlocutor to talk to. So, and yeah, thanks a lot for having me. And also many thanks to our listeners today. It was really my pleasure to talk to you about Sci2Sci and our perspective and our future plans to improve science.
That was very nice of you. Thank you very much. I try my best. Before we head off, though, there is actually one question that I do want to ask you. And this is in terms of your guys' roadmap. So what can we expect to see from you from Sci2Sci in 2023? I know you guys just launched your website. You guys are going into beta test. How long is that beta test expected to be, and what else can we expect from you guys?
Yeah, so we're planning to run our beta test. I would say to finish our beta testing in like around beginning of summer, hopefully, or at least like to get the first cohort of results, and that would provide us valuable feedback. And at the same time, around beginning of summer, we hopefully will be able to launch our publishing platform for beta testing, so that we will not be able just to search for the data, but we will allow people to actually already publish the data on our platform. We're not yet sure about the timeline for electronic lab notebooks, because this is a very important module that we want to implement to really make it easy for scientists to publish that. But that still depends on a number of factors. So I don't want to overpromise. I really want to see it out this year, but just don't want to to be over optimistic, just in case.
Yes, conservative is always the most practical way of doing it. So, all right. Well, with that being said, Angelina, again, thank you for this. I am very much excited. I think I mentioned this to you the first time we spoke, but your platform is very, very exciting to me. I look forward to being able to beta test. I'm going to sign up myself. Maria, thank you for coming on and asking great, fantastic questions in terms of delving deeper into Sci2Sci. And for everybody who is listening, who will be listening later on, please go to the Sci2Sci handle, follow them, turn on all notifications, check out their website, sign up for the beta test, help push forward the science that you want to see. This is a communal effort. This is a collective effort. The only way we're going to get there is if we all participate. And so please take the time to do so. This is really going to help yourselves and everybody else in this space. Give Angelina a follow on LinkedIn herself. She is great. She posts a lot of really interesting topics. Give DeSci a follow. Everybody in the community, we need to support yourselves. And so with that being said, I'm going to wrap up this episode of DeSci Rising. Sci2Sci, fantastic platform. Thank you all again for coming in. Thank you everybody for listening. For those of you who know, open your DMs, because we're going to be dropping POAPs to you eventually. And with that, have a great weekend. And I will see you guys next week for our next episode of DeSci Rising. So have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jelani. Have a great weekend too. Bye-bye.
Bye.